Good afternoon once again. Very pleased to welcome Ms. Vera Spender from the London Institute of Banking and Finance.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sustainable finance, all the way coming from London.
Yeah.
It is controversial indeed, like we're talking. Here in the Middle East, very few countries are mandating ESG reporting for the publicly listed companies, including banks.
Yes.
We, like many top executives, told me that very few banks in the UAE and the region are ready to talk on ESG for various reasons. They believe they are not ready, not yet. How can we push forward ESG and sustainability within banks? Not only basically in terms of reporting, but to develop the culture of sustainability and ESG within banks.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for the question. Difficult question. If I look at the example of Europe, for example, in Europe, obviously, lots of the change is pushed through legislation and regulation. So unlike here, we have standards that are mandatory for green bonds, for various types of reporting. TCFD is currently mandatory, which is reporting related to risks specifically for climate change. There are now risks specifically related to loss of biodiversity. So it is very much driven from the top.
Yeah, but some believe that when you are mandating or enforcing ESG reporting, that's when the greenwashing skyrockets.
I mean, I would quite like to believe that leaders of organizations want to run the organization in a way that will deliver value not only for themselves in a short term, but also for the people who will come after them. So if you want to run a company sustainably, it is actually a strategic exercise. So yes, we are finding that organizations that take ESG reporting as a compliance exercise, they normally spend a fair bit of money on creating ESG reports, but they don't really see the benefit.
The practices are not really unified. It's like football. You have the French style of playing football, like the English style, like the Italian style, or like Brazilian or Argentinian. What is the most suitable sustainable finance style in this part of the world?
There is no such thing as a sustainable finance style. I mean, I know that you mentioned different rules of football. Obviously, you can say business is a little bit like football, but I would almost say the different rules of football. It's like different business models,
correct?
Right?
That's exactly what I meant.
We all work within certain boundaries, and different industry sectors, for example, would have their own obviously different challenges. So if you work in the Middle East, if you work in oil and gas, you will have completely different challenge to if you work in Ireland and you have an IT company that's producing intangible product. There's quite a lot of well, how do I say this? I wouldn't be in a position to advise the leadership of all oil and gas companies, and tell them how they should run the business. But there's quite a lot of advice. What I would perhaps advise them to do, there's an initiative that's striving for net zero, so to speak. Net zero means decarbonization of your supply chain. And sustainable finance in itself, sustainable finance is like any other type of finance, right? The banks or the financial institutions, they do not work in isolation. They are not organizations in their own right. They are supporting the real economy. So we need to see the change in the real economy, which will then propagate into
in
finance.
the world of finance and banking, how can we move the ESG and sustainable finance from reporting to a comprehensive culture?
Change of mindset. And I would say because of the culture in the region, you start from the top. So if you are, for example, a CEO of a bank and you want to see the change, you have to start with your own team. So you have to see how many of these people in your team actually, you can obviously send them to a training, and give them an idea what they are talking about. That's probably the first thing I would do, because what we're finding is that companies that greenwash, they normally don't greenwash because they are evil and want to mislead us, but they greenwash because they don't understand. They don't understand the complexity. They don't understand that we live in a system, not in kind of one, one track where you just run as fast as you can. So yes, send them on an awareness training, or even
how does the sustainable finance and the ESG training among the Middle Eastern finance and banks?
What does it look like? Yeah, what do? We from LIBF, the London Institute of Banking and Finance, we do run quite a lot of trainings here in the Middle East for top management as well as senior management, and sometimes even for the employees, junior employees, because the new generation is much more keen to obviously deliver sustainability because they will live in that world. And what we typically do is we try to give them context. So we would tell them first what sustainability actually is. What is the definition of sustainability versus, for example, CSR, corporate social responsibility. Many people still mix the two.
Absolutely.
CSR obviously is not sustainability. Some of it is sustainable, some of it is not sustainable. And then we look at the regional context. So what should an organization in the Middle East focus on? Then we look at what is happening in terms of the transition at every different level. So international level, national level, and then potentially even regional level, right? So what sort of, how is the policymaker helping us to actually do anything?
My last question, you mentioned that in the Middle East, banks are active in this space. How do you compare us in the MENA region compared to Europe or other parts of the world?
I actually do like the fact that many, I know that we just talked about, many organizations that I meet here in the Middle East, they do understand that they can't keep operating the way they are operating at the moment. So there is, despite the lack of regulation, exactly, despite the lack of regulation, the lack of standardization, there is appetite, and the organizations are seeking a way how to transform the business model, and at the same time, how the organization becomes viable or even more profitable than it is at the moment. So, yeah, I mean, I have high hopes actually for Middle East.
Ms. Vera, thank you very much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.